It is Easter Sunday today, which we've mentioned before. It's kind of the heart of springtime. And Easter is a story of death and rebirth. It's a story of spiritual evolution. It's a story of crucifixion and resurrection. And the title of the talk today is What Can I Do? And it's a little bit informed by the story of Jesus the man turning into Jesus the metaphor and the Christ consciousness and the Christ light shining. We celebrate a little bit of that story around the winter solstice with the birth of the Christ light, Christmas time. And that story keeps on coming up. There's a story that's been in my mind lately, which is about a forest fire. There's a huge forest fire that's going and all the animals are running out of the forest. And there's this little hummingbird that's going in the opposite direction, flying back into the forest. And one of the other animals, one of the squirrels or raccoons, just says, "What's the matter with this goofy hummingbird? What are you doing?" He stops the hummingbird and says, "What are you doing?" The hummingbird is carrying water in its little tiny beak. And it carries the water and it drops it on the fire and it comes back out and it tells the other animal, I'm doing what I can to put out the fire. Goes and gets some more water and flies back and does it again. And the other animal says, "That's pointless. Why are you even trying to do that? You can't do anything." And the hummingbird says, "Well, it's all I can do. This is what I can do." And the point is, what can I do? Sometimes we feel powerless. What can we do? That story actually reminded me of one that I've known for a while and then got made popular a little bit in the movie Catch Me If You Can. And it's a story about, for some reason, two frogs find themselves trapped in a butter of cream. They're in a dairy and they fall into the bucket, and the sides are really steep and the cream is really deep, and they're like treading water because otherwise they're going to drown. They're going to drown in this bucket of cream, and they don't know what can possibly happen. And so they're treading water and nothing's happening, and they're talking to each other. This is the end. This is doom. One of them says, "I just got to keep going. We got to keep going." And they're both keep going. And one of them, who figures out what's going to happen, who understands that they're doomed, stops treading water and drowns. And the other one, who's not smart enough to understand that it's completely pointless, continues treading water. And that story repeats itself over and over again. There's the story of the scrappy insurgency, where somebody is trying to reject the status quo. There's something untoward or malevolent or evil or uncomfortable or somehow undesirable that's going on. And then the scrappy insurgency says, "I don't know what I can do. I don't know what it's possible for me to change, but I got to do something. So I'm going to give it a try." And they may seem forlorn. It might seem like there's a completely unfair fight. So here's Princess Leia and the Death Star. We know that story. So this is Darth Vader and the Empire, and she's just there, getting her feisty on. Yesterday I went to another protest in Independence Mall in Philadelphia, the No Kings protest. So it's a bunch of people, carrying signs around Center City, Philadelphia, and making our voices heard. What can I do? That's what you can do. And then it turns out that the story of Easter, which starts with Jesus going into Jerusalem the week before, is a protest march. And they're all, there on Palm Sunday waving the palm fronds at him because he didn't agree with the way that the church was running things. He thought there was a different possibility. There's something more that could be going on. And so he went in his scrappy insurgency to take a stand. The same thing comes up for us all the time. And the New Thought teaching reminds us to look a fact in the face and know something better. We get to engage. We get to take part. We get to know something better. We get to be part of the scrappy insurgency. So we know what happened with Princess Leia and the Death Star. It turns out that the scrappy insurgency did okay, and that set up another 9 or 15 movies because the Death Star couldn't necessarily survive what the scrappy insurgency was bringing about. Jesus went through a crucifixion process, which, according to what the scripture says, it was not the most comfortable process for him. He got a little upset with God, like, "Why'd you let this happen?" But went through the process, and the crucifixion made way for the resurrection. That's what we celebrate on Easter Sunday. So as any of us are going through some experience of loss or destruction or something untoward and unacceptable and undesirable happening, perhaps it is the setup for a resurrection. Perhaps there's a way for something to blossom out of that. And our job is to engage with the story, to not hide from the story, not pretend that it isn't happening, not, duck out of the way so that it can happen to somebody else, but engage with the story, to look a fact in the face and know something better. And we don't know what that better could be. There's a story of a little hummingbird carrying the water into the raging fire. What can I do? What can I possibly do? All I see, little tiny hummingbird, huge forest fire. But of course, what happens next is it starts to rain. And it rains and it rains and it rains. And the hummingbird has done everything that it can. Has it made the change? I don't know. Might not seem that way from the outside. But between the hummingbird and the rain, the fire went out and the forest continued to be the forest that it was going to be. And that stupid frog stuck in the cream that just kept there treading water, didn't know enough to give up. Well, I'm not sure if you've ever churned butter, but it starts with cream and you just keep on kicking. And what that frog did is it churned itself up a little island of butter and just sat there cool and comfortable until the milkmaid came along and said, "How did this frog get in here?" and threw it out. It is possible that we do not know the answer to the story as we're engaging in it. Perhaps we can let go of everything that we think that we know to be open to a new possibility and see what's going on. It is possible that that crucifixion experience where everything seems lost is not the end of the story. Maybe there's a way that we can engage, that we can be present to what's going on. Do we have to take the weight of the whole world on our shoulders every time we do that? No. No, we don't have to carry the whole thing ourselves, but we get to engage. We get to be part of the process. We get to pay attention. And, there's a lot of stuff that's going on in the country now, and some people are like jumping in, and some people are running away, and some people, I just can't deal with it. I'm not going to pay any attention at all. And I'm not going to criticize or judge, but what I am going to suggest is find a way to pay enough attention that when your cue comes along, when the thing happens that tells you, this is mine to do, you notice it. You see, this is something that I can do. This is a way that I can bring some more good into this. And by paying attention just a little bit, we have the opportunity to bring something new into experience. And I found myself thinking a lot about paying attention lately. Because, and I did a talk about this, some weeks back. Because we're now in an attention economy where the people who are on social media and online, what they're doing is they're selling ads and they want to have our attention. So when we are investing our attention, whether it's in a game or a social media feed or which news we're going to be looking at, we are paying with our attention. And I got a wonderful bit of insight on just exactly what our attention is worth. When you pay attention to something, how much value do you attach to the time and the energy and the attention that you're putting into something? The way that I came up with the value of this, or was reminded that there is a value of this and it can be measured somehow, is artificial intelligence. Now, I didn't just ask artificial intelligence what's attention worth, because it doesn't know. But there's some scientists who realized that as powerful and as smart seeming as artificial intelligence is, and there's some things that it's really good at. Generative artificial intelligence, the large language models, they've taken everything that humanity knows and they've digitized it and they put it in there so it can reference everything in the library really quickly and cross-reference and come up with, this is the best that anyone's ever said, or this is the thing that people have said the most often. And it comes off seeming very, very smart. But it turns out there are some things at which artificial intelligence sucks. I mean really bad. So I'll give you an example. This is the first test that they did. And up at the top here, there are a couple of examples. So this is what you start with, and this is what you wind up with. So it's these shapes inside of the square here, and then that's the result. And then there's another example down here, these shapes, and it winds up with this result. And using that pattern, the instructions are to fill in this one. So starting out with this, where do you put the magenta dots in this one so that it matches the other one? And I don't know if you have enough time to do that, but it seems pretty clear that what you do is there are 3 dots that make a corner, and the 4th dot is where the little dot is where the colored one goes. And in fact, that's the correct answer on that. It's really easy for people to do that. When they gave that to the first generation AI systems, they completely failed. They could not figure it out. They just couldn't do it. So now there's a prize, there's a contest, there's a test to see how smart the general artificial intelligence programs can get at doing things where they're given some examples and have to figure out from the examples what the solution on the next one is. That's completely different than the way generative AI works, which is just to memorize everything that's already known and look for the patterns in that. This is to take some patterns and find the original piece. So here's the second generation one, where you start out with these 3 samples, and then you're given these shapes, and what's the final one going to look like? So again, this is the prompt, this is the solution. This is a prompt, this is a solution. This is a prompt, this is a solution. This is the prompt. Whoops, down here. What's the solution? 1,400 AI systems failed to complete that one. This is recently. 1,400 different AI systems failed to do that. And there was a very special, very fancy one that was able to come up with the answer. And by the way, it took me a couple of minutes to do this. And it would take you a couple of minutes to do this. The AI system that did that still didn't win the prize. And the reason that it didn't win the prize is because it took $1.5 million worth of computing power and electricity to get the answer. We can pay attention and come up with that answer in a minute or two. Do not underestimate the value of your attention. This is $1.5 million worth. What can you do? Keep at it. Pay attention. Engage in the story. Allow that infinite intelligence, that divine guidance that knows what's coming next, to suggest something to you. And pay attention when the guidance shows up, because there's a step for you to take. And the blessings unfold for us and through us and as us. Have a most joyous, happy Resurrection Day.